Success is often spoken about in loud voices, in numbers, in trophies, and in titles, yet its truest form lives quietly within the human spirit. It lives in the way a person rises after being broken, in the courage it takes to believe in oneself when the world remains unconvinced, and in the strength to keep walking even when the road feels unseen. Today, we are not here to chase a definition of success borrowed from others, but to uncover the deeper truths that successful people carry within them, truths that shape their character long before they shape their achievements. These are not secrets written in books or whispered in elite rooms. They are lessons etched into the hearts of those who dared to trust their journey, honor their discipline, and stand firmly in their own light. Success begins the moment you decide your worth is non-negotiable. Not when the applause arrives, not when the money follows, not when the world finally agrees with you, but when you stand alone and still choose yourself. There comes a quiet moment in every life when you realize that begging for validation is exhausting and shrinking to fit expectations is a slow kind of surrender. In that moment, successful people draw an invisible line and say, "This is who I am, and I will not erase myself to be accepted." That decision may not change the world instantly, but it changes the way they walk in it. When you honor your worth, you stop allowing disrespect to feel normal. You no longer confuse tolerance with strength or silence with peace. Successful people understand that self-respect is not arrogance, it is survival. They learn to say no without guilt and yes without fear. They stop explaining their dreams to those committed to misunderstanding them. Their confidence is not loud, but it is rooted. It grows from knowing that their value does not rise or fall with opinions, setbacks, or temporary failures. This belief in self-worth becomes the foundation of discipline. When you believe you matter, you take care of your time, your energy, and your purpose. You show up even on days when motivation is absent. You do the work when no one is watching, because quitting on yourself feels heavier than the effort required to continue. Successful people are not always inspired. They are committed. They understand that discipline is a form of love you give yourself when comfort tries to steal your future. Along the way, they encounter failure, but they do not allow it to define them. Failure speaks, but it does not get the final word. Successful people listen to its lessons without wearing its shame. They understand that falling is human, but staying down is a choice. Each setback refines their strength, sharpens their focus, and humbles their ego. They rise not because the road is easy, but because their spirit refuses to stay broken. Another quiet power they carry is patience. They do not rush their growth or compare their timing to others. They trust that what is meant for them will require preparation, not panic. While others chase quick results, successful people build lasting character. They plant seeds knowing they may not sit in the shade immediately, yet they water them anyway. Faith for them is not passive. It is practiced daily through persistence. In the end, success is not just what they achieve, but who they become. It is reflected in their integrity, their resilience, and their ability to stand tall without stepping on others. They walk forward knowing their worth, guided by discipline, strengthened by failure, and grounded in purpose. And that is the kind of success that cannot be taken away, because it was built from the inside out. Truly successful people understand that before they try to shape the world, they must first learn how to shape themselves. They know that ambition without self-mastery is like a river without banks, powerful but directionless. Long before recognition finds them, they learn to sit with their thoughts, confront their fears, and make peace with their flaws. They do not run from their weaknesses. They study them because they know what you understand can no longer control you. This inner work is quiet, unseen, and often lonely, but it becomes the backbone of everything they later build. They learn to govern their emotions instead of being ruled by them. Anger may knock, doubt may whisper, and fear may linger. But successful people choose not to let these feelings drive their decisions. They pause where others react. They breathe where others break. They recognize that emotional discipline is not suppression, it is wisdom. When the world tries to provoke them into becoming smaller, they respond by becoming calmer. In mastering their inner storms, they gain a strength that no external chaos can easily shake. Self-mastery also teaches them patience. They understand that growth is not rushed and purpose cannot be microwaved. While others chase instant results, successful people commit to daily progress. They are willing to be beginners, willing to fail slowly, willing to look foolish while learning. They do not measure their journey by speed, but by direction. Each small act of consistency becomes a quiet promise they keep to themselves, and over time, those promises turn into unshakable confidence. They also learn the discipline of choice. Every day presents distractions dressed as opportunities and temptations disguised as comfort. Successful people choose what aligns with their values, even when it costs them popularity or ease. They understand that saying no is often the most powerful form of self-respect. By mastering their choices, they protect their energy and preserve their focus, knowing that a scattered mind cannot build a meaningful life. In mastering themselves, they develop compassion for their own humanity and for others. They stop competing out of insecurity and start creating out of purpose. They do not feel threatened by another person's light because they have learned to tend their own flame. Their confidence becomes generous, not defensive. They lift others not to appear superior, but because they remember what it felt like to climb in the dark. Only after this inner work do they begin to touch the world in meaningful ways. Their influence feels steady, not forced. Their leadership feels grounded, not performative. They do not need to dominate rooms to be felt, because their presence carries weight. The world listens to them because they have first learned to listen to themselves. In the end, success does not crown them, it reflects them. It mirrors the discipline they practiced in silence, the character they built when no one was watching, and the courage it took to become whole. And that is the quiet truth. When you master yourself, the world no longer feels like something to conquer, but something you are finally ready to serve. Discipline is often misunderstood as restriction, as force, as something harsh meant to deny joy. But successful people know a deeper truth. Discipline is not punishment. It is self-respect in action. It is the quiet decision to honor your future, even when your present feels tired, distracted, or discouraged. Discipline is choosing what you said you wanted long after the mood that inspired it has faded. It is not about being hard on yourself, but about believing you are worthy of consistency, care, and follow-through. When you respect yourself, you stop abandoning your goals at the first sign of discomfort. You stop making excuses sound like reasons and start making progress sound like a promise. Discipline shows up when no one is clapping, when motivation is asleep, and when quitting feels convenient. Successful people understand that every small disciplined action is a vote for the life they are trying to build. They do not wait to feel ready. They act because readiness grows through action. Discipline also teaches patience with oneself. It does not demand perfection, but it requires honesty. Some days you will move slowly, some days you will stumble, but discipline says you show up anyway. It reminds you that growth is not dramatic every day. Sometimes it is simply choosing not to give up. Successful people forgive themselves for being human, but they do not give themselves permission to stay stuck. They understand the difference between rest and retreat. There is dignity in discipline. It teaches you how to keep your word to yourself, and that builds trust within your own spirit. When you do what you said you would do, your confidence stops being something you talk about and becomes something you live. You no longer rely on external validation because you know your effort is real. Successful people walk differently because they know they have earned their self-belief through consistency. Discipline also protects your dreams. It creates boundaries where distractions try to enter. It says no to what drains you so it can say yes to what fulfills you. Successful people do not confuse busyness with progress. They choose focus over noise, purpose over popularity, and long-term peace over short-term pleasure. They understand that every disciplined choice is an act of self-care, even when it feels uncomfortable in the moment. Over time, discipline reshapes identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries and start seeing yourself as someone who finishes. You stop waiting for confidence and realize confidence has been quietly forming through your habits. Successful people are not extraordinary because they never struggle. They are extraordinary because they stay committed through the struggle. In the end, discipline becomes freedom. Freedom from regret, from chaos, from the pain of knowing you could have done more. It gives you a life that reflects your values, not your impulses. And that is the quiet power of discipline. It is not a cage, it is a declaration that your dreams matter, your effort counts, and you respect yourself enough to keep going. Successful people carry a quiet strength that is often mistaken for silence, but it is not emptiness, it is awareness. They listen more than they speak because they understand that wisdom rarely announces itself loudly. While others rush to fill every pause with opinions, successful people allow space for understanding to enter. They know that every voice carries a lesson, every moment holds information, and every silence has something to teach. Listening for them is not passive, it is intentional. They listen to people without preparing their reply while the other person is still speaking. They listen beyond words, hearing emotions, patterns, and truths that are often left unspoken. In conversations, they learn not just about others, but about themselves, their triggers, their assumptions, and their blind spots. Successful people are curious, not defensive. They are not trying to win every discussion, they are trying to grow. And growth begins when the ego steps aside. Silence becomes one of their greatest teachers. In silence, they meet their fears without distraction. In silence, they hear the quiet voice of intuition that noise often drowns out. While the world urges constant movement and constant expression, successful people understand the value of stillness. They sit with uncertainty long enough to gain clarity. They allow answers to rise instead of forcing conclusions. Silence teaches them patience, depth, and restraint. They also learn when not to speak. They understand that not every truth needs to be spoken, and not every reaction deserves a response. By choosing silence in moments of conflict, they protect their peace and preserve their energy. They do not waste words trying to convince those who are not ready to listen. Successful people know that power does not come from always being heard, but from knowing when your voice truly matters. Listening shapes their leadership. Because they listen, people trust them. Because they listen, people feel seen. Successful people do not lead by domination, they lead by understanding. They gather perspectives before making decisions. They learn from mistakes, both their own and others. They know that wisdom is borrowed from experience, and experience belongs to many, not just to one. Even in failure, they listen. They do not rush past disappointment or silence the discomfort. They ask themselves hard questions and sit with honest answers. What went wrong? What needs to change? What is this moment asking of me? In listening to their failures, they extract strength instead of shame. Silence gives them the courage to face reality without denial. Over time, this habit reshapes who they become. Their words gain weight because they are chosen carefully. When they finally speak, people listen because their voice carries thought, reflection, and truth. They do not speak to impress, they speak to connect, to uplift, to guide. Their communication becomes meaningful because it is rooted in understanding. In a world addicted to noise, successful people master the language of listening. They learn even when nothing is said, grow even when nothing is happening, and strengthen themselves in moments that look ordinary to others. And that is their quiet advantage. While others are busy speaking to be noticed, successful people are listening, learning, and becoming. Talent may open a door, but it is consistency that teaches you how to walk through it and keep going. Successful people understand that raw ability is only a beginning, not a guarantee. Many are gifted, many are intelligent, many are full of ideas, yet few stay long enough with their dreams to see them become real. Consistency is the quiet decision to return every day, even when excitement fades and progress feels invisible. It is choosing to show up when the world is not watching and when results are not yet rewarding. Dreamers often wait for inspiration, but achievers build habits. They do not rely on bursts of motivation because motivation is unpredictable and fragile. Instead, they create routines that carry them forward on ordinary days. Successful people know that greatness is not built in moments of intensity, but in repeated effort. One small step, done faithfully, carries more power than one giant leap taken only once. Consistency teaches patience with the process. It reminds you that growth is rarely dramatic and success rarely arrives overnight. There are seasons when your effort feels unnoticed and your work feels unfinished. In these moments, dreamers often quit, believing nothing is happening. But achievers understand a deeper truth. Progress is often silent before it becomes visible. Roots grow underground long before the tree stands tall. Consistency is trusting that your effort matters even when there is no immediate proof. Through consistency, confidence is formed, not the loud kind that seeks approval, but the steady kind that comes from knowing you did not give up on yourself. Every time you keep a promise to your goal, you strengthen trust within yourself. Successful people are confident not because they never doubt, but because they keep moving despite doubt. They know their power comes from repetition, from persistence, from refusing to disappear when things get difficult. Consistency also reshapes identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries and start seeing yourself as someone who continues. You stop chasing perfection and start valuing progress. Successful people allow themselves to be imperfect but persistent. They understand that mistakes are not signs of failure. Inconsistency is. By staying committed, they turn learning into growth and effort into mastery. Even on days when energy is low and belief feels weak, consistency carries them forward. They may move slowly, but they do not stop. They may rest, but they do not quit. Successful people respect the rhythm of progress. They understand that consistency does not mean forcing yourself endlessly. It means returning with intention again and again, no matter how many times life interrupts. In the end, success bows to consistency. Talent may impress, but consistency transforms. It turns ordinary actions into extraordinary results. It separates those who talk about dreams from those who live them. And that is the quiet power successful people hold. They do not wait for the perfect moment, the perfect mood, or the perfect conditions. They keep going. And because they keep going, they arrive. Failure is never a verdict for successful people. It is a teacher that comes with tough love, showing lessons that no comfort or applause could ever teach. They do not fear it, though the world often paints it as shameful. Instead, they meet it with curiosity, with patience, and with courage. Failure tells them where they were careless, where assumptions misled them, and where effort must deepen. It is harsh, yes, but fair, and it demands honesty, which becomes the foundation of real growth. While others run from the pain of mistakes, successful people step closer because they know this is where true wisdom begins. They understand that every failure carries a mirror reflecting not just the world, but themselves. It reveals impatience, pride, or shortcuts they may have taken. It exposes where they trusted too little or too much, where they acted without clarity, and where they ignored small warnings. In this reflection, there is no condemnation, only instruction. Successful people absorb these lessons not as burdens, but as tools to sharpen their vision, to strengthen their strategy, and to deepen their resolve. They learn to separate identity from outcome. A failure does not define them, it informs them. Failure humbles them. It reminds them that no matter how capable, gifted, or prepared they are, life will always present challenges that cannot be avoided. They learn the value of persistence, patience, and adaptability. In embracing failure, they discover that resilience is not a trait they were born with, but a skill cultivated through repeated effort and honest reflection. Each setback becomes a training ground for endurance, each mistake a rehearsal for better choices. Where fear might stop others, it teaches them to step with caution, yet keep moving. They also understand that failure is not permanent unless they make it so. They do not allow one misstep to become a pattern of self-doubt. Instead, they analyze, adapt, and try again. Successful people are not reckless, they are thoughtful, and they treat failure as feedback, not defeat. They learn to fail gracefully, without shame, but with determination. In doing so, they develop the courage to take risks that others avoid, knowing that every risk carries both potential loss and potential growth. Perhaps most importantly, failure cultivates empathy. When they have stumbled, they understand the struggles of others. When they have been lost, they can guide someone else without judgment. Failure teaches patience, humility, and compassion, qualities that cannot be learned in the comfort of constant success. Successful people know that their journey is not just about reaching the top, but about how they rise, fall, and rise again, and how they lift others along the way. Ultimately, failure is not a wall, it is a doorway. It challenges, it teaches, and it transforms. It separates those who merely wish from those who persist. It does not weaken those who embrace it, it strengthens them. And that is why failure, when understood, is not the enemy of success, but one of its greatest allies, harsh, honest, and unyielding, yet filled with the wisdom that makes triumph meaningful. Successful people choose growth over comfort, even when it feels lonely. They understand that the life they dream of cannot be built in safety zones or familiar spaces. Growth demands stretching beyond what feels easy, beyond the warmth of routine and the security of approval. It asks them to face uncertainty, to meet challenges they cannot yet solve, and to walk paths where no one else may follow. This is not a journey for the faint of heart, and yet they embrace it, because they know comfort will never deliver the transformation they seek. Choosing growth often means standing alone. Friends may not understand the choices they make, families may question the risks, and society may label them as different or even stubborn. Yet successful people do not shrink to fit the expectations of others. They learn to sit with solitude, to allow silence to accompany their ambition, and to find companionship in their own determination. In those quiet, solitary moments, they reflect, plan, and gather the courage to continue. They understand that loneliness is not punishment. It is a signal that they are stepping into uncharted territory, and that territory is where real growth lives. Growth also requires discomfort. It demands that they confront their weaknesses and face truths about themselves that others might avoid. It asks them to risk failure, to endure criticism, and to persist even when immediate results are invisible. Successful people do not treat discomfort as a threat. They see it as a guide. Every challenge faced, every fear acknowledged, and every risk taken is a step toward becoming stronger, wiser, and more capable. Comfort is temporary, but growth is enduring, and they choose what lasts over what soothes. They cultivate habits that support expansion, even when it feels inconvenient. They invest in learning, in stretching skills, and in experiences that broaden their vision. They do not wait for the perfect moment or for circumstances to be ideal. They move intentionally, knowing that growth rarely aligns with comfort, and that personal evolution is often forged in moments of struggle and decision. Their days may feel long, their path uncertain, but each action they take builds momentum toward the life they envision. Choosing growth also builds resilience. Every challenge endured while pushing beyond comfort strengthens their spirit. Every lonely evening spent working toward mastery teaches patience. Every uncomfortable conversation, every moment of self-reflection, and every difficult decision contributes to a strength that is invisible but undeniable. Successful people understand that growth is not a straight line, but a series of climbs, descents, and recoveries. The discomfort is temporary. The transformation is lasting. Ultimately, growth over comfort becomes a way of life. It is the quiet force that propels them past fear, past doubt, past hesitation. It separates those who remain stuck in familiarity from those who rise to their potential. They know that choosing growth may feel lonely, it may feel hard, and it may demand sacrifices, but it also leads to mastery, fulfillment, and a life lived fully. And that is why successful people embrace discomfort, stand alone when needed, and choose the path that shapes them into who they were always meant to become. Gratitude is the quiet heartbeat that keeps successful people grounded, even as ambition drives them forward. They know that no achievement exists in isolation. No victory is earned entirely alone. Every opportunity, every mentor, every challenge that tested them, and every hand that lifted them along the way is part of their journey. Gratitude reminds them to pause and honor these contributions, to recognize the unseen forces that helped shape their path. It is not a fleeting emotion, but a practice, a way of seeing the world that allows them to remain humble while reaching for more. Even as they climb higher, successful people never allow their ambition to blind them to the blessings already present. They celebrate small wins, honor progress, and acknowledge the people who make their journey possible. Gratitude keeps arrogance at bay. It reminds them that talent, intelligence, and hard work matter, but so do patience, support, and timing. Without this awareness, ambition risks becoming hollow, driven only by ego or comparison. Gratitude nourishes the soul, ensuring that their pursuit of success remains rooted in meaning and connection. Gratitude also fuels resilience. In moments of failure or setback, it allows them to see what remains rather than what is lost. They focus on lessons learned, on relationships strengthened, and on opportunities still within reach. This perspective transforms obstacles from threats into stepping stones. While many might despair when doors close or plans falter, successful people find space to say, "I am thankful for what this moment is teaching me." That attitude does not remove difficulty, but it softens it, providing clarity and courage to continue. At the same time, ambition is the flame that keeps them moving, refusing to let gratitude make them complacent. They are never fully satisfied with the status quo, never willing to settle for less than what they are capable of achieving. Ambition drives them to innovate, to expand, and to reach heights they could not see from yesterday. Yet, ambition without gratitude risks becoming restless, insatiable, or bitter. By balancing these two forces, successful people maintain focus and energy while staying humble, kind, and present. Gratitude shapes how they treat others. It makes them generous with praise, patient with mistakes, and empathetic toward struggles. It allows them to lift others as they climb, acknowledging that true success is not a solitary pursuit. Ambition keeps them moving toward their goals, but gratitude ensures they move in a way that honors people, values, and principles. It prevents the pursuit of success from overshadowing the life they are living along the way. Ultimately, gratitude and ambition exist together like two wings of the same bird. Gratitude keeps their spirit humble, anchored, and aware of the beauty already present, while ambition propels them forward into new possibilities. One allows them to celebrate the journey, the other ensures they continue it. Successful people do not abandon either, they cultivate both. In this balance, they find not just achievement, but fulfillment, a life that soars, grounded in humility and lifted by vision. Successful people protect their time as if it were sacred because they understand something many overlook. Time is the one resource that never returns. Money can be earned again, opportunities can reappear, but a wasted hour is gone forever. They do not treat time casually or give it away to anything that does not align with their purpose. This awareness changes how they live, how they choose, and how they show up each day. For them, time is not just something that passes, it is something to be honored. They learn early that being busy is not the same as being productive. The world constantly pulls at their attention. Notifications, demands, expectations, and distractions disguised as urgency. Successful people pause and ask a deeper question: does this deserve my time? They understand that every yes is also a no to something else. By choosing carefully where their time goes, they protect their energy, their focus, and their long-term vision. They do not feel guilty for guarding their hours because they know their dreams depend on it. Protecting time also means setting boundaries, even when it feels uncomfortable. Successful people are willing to disappoint others rather than betray themselves. They do not allow constant access to erode their peace. They learn to say no without lengthy explanations and to step away from situations that drain them emotionally or mentally. These boundaries are not walls built from arrogance. They are fences built from clarity. They understand that without boundaries, their time will be consumed by other people's priorities. They also become intentional with solitude. Successful people value quiet moments, not because they are antisocial, but because silence sharpens focus. In stillness, they think clearly, plan wisely, and reconnect with their purpose. They know that creativity, insight, and self-awareness often arrive when the noise fades. By protecting time for reflection, learning, and rest, they ensure that their actions come from intention rather than reaction. Time protection shows up in their daily habits. They wake up with purpose instead of drifting into the day. They schedule what matters most instead of hoping it fits in later. They do not wait for perfect conditions to begin important work. They create space for it. Even rest becomes intentional because they understand that exhaustion wastes more time than rest ever will. Successful people respect their limits, knowing that a burned out mind cannot build a meaningful future. They are also mindful of who they share their time with. They seek conversations that nourish growth, environments that encourage progress, and relationships that respect their vision. They slowly distance themselves from constant negativity, gossip, and distractions that lead nowhere. This is not cruelty, it is discernment. They know that time spent in the wrong company slowly pulls them away from who they are becoming. In the end, protecting time is an act of self-respect and self-belief. It is saying, my life matters, my dreams matter, my purpose deserves attention. Successful people do not rush through life reacting to everything around them. They move with intention, aware that how they spend their time is how they spend their life, and because they treat time as sacred, their lives begin to reflect meaning, progress, and fulfillment that others can feel, even from a distance. Believing in a vision before the world applauds requires a special kind of courage, the kind that is born in solitude and strengthened by faith. Successful people carry their dreams quietly at first, protecting them from doubt, ridicule, and premature judgment. They do not wait for permission to believe in what they see, even when no one else can yet imagine it. Their vision begins as a whisper in the heart, fragile and uncertain, but deeply personal. Long before recognition arrives, they choose to trust that inner voice. There are seasons when belief feels heavy, when effort goes unnoticed and progress seems invisible. In these moments, successful people learn to become their own encouragement. They clap for themselves in empty rooms, celebrate small steps that no one else sees, and remind themselves why they started. They understand that the world often applauds outcomes, not beginnings, so they do not measure their worth by external approval. They measure it by their commitment to keep going when validation is absent. Believing early often means being misunderstood. Others may question their choices, dismiss their ideas, or label their dreams unrealistic. Successful people listen, but they do not surrender their vision to doubt. They understand that criticism is often rooted in fear, fear of the unknown, fear of change, or fear of seeing someone dare greatly. Rather than arguing, they allow their consistency to speak. They stay focused, knowing that proof is built over time, not demanded up front. Faith in a vision also demands patience. Dreams rarely unfold on our timeline. There are delays, detours, and moments when it feels easier to let go than to hold on. Successful people learn to wait without losing hope. They refine their skills, strengthen their mindset, and prepare quietly while the world is busy elsewhere. They trust that when the moment arrives, they will be ready, not rushed. Preparation becomes an act of belief. As they nurture their vision, their identity begins to shift. They start living as the person their dream requires them to become. They develop discipline, resilience, and clarity because their future depends on it. Even without applause, they show up with excellence. Even without recognition, they act with integrity. Their belief is not loud, but it is steady, rooted in purpose rather than praise. When the world finally notices, it often seems sudden to outsiders. People call it luck, overnight success, or coincidence. But successful people know the truth. They remember the quiet nights, the self-doubt they faced, and the determination that carried them through. The applause, when it comes, is welcomed, but it is not what sustains them. They were already standing when no one was watching. In the end, believing in your vision before the world applauds is an act of self-trust. It is choosing to honor what you feel called to build, even when the path is unclear. Successful people understand that applause is temporary, but belief is foundational. And it is that belief, held patiently, fiercely, and faithfully, that turns unseen dreams into undeniable realities.